Hi, everyone. This is Tony Nash with Complete Intelligence. We're here for another quick hit, which is a quick 5 to 10 minute discussion with experts in their field, trying to figure out what's going on in markets and the world economy. Today, we're joined by Sam Rines with Avalon Investment and Advisory. Sam is their chief economist. Sam, thanks so much for taking time to talk with us today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tony.
Can you tell us a little bit about kind of what you do and what does Avalon do?
Sure. So I'm the economist. We are a high net worth wealth management firm in Houston, Texas, with approximately $9 billion under management. And I do a little bit of everything from watching the macro of quote unquote the US economy to state and local economies to ad hoc research for clients on specific things that they're interested in, whether it's for their operating business or investments with Avalon or outside of Avalon.
Great. Thanks, Sam. Now, if you don't subscribe to Sam's newsletter, he does a daily newsletter. He's one of the only economists that I listen to, and he just thinks about really, really interesting stuff on a daily basis. So I follow him every day. I'd suggest you do the same. Sam, I guess part of what I wanted to talk about was, we've gone through this real anomaly through the COVID period, and really governments globally have just kind of stopped their economies. And, I'm trying to figure out when and how do we come out of this? We have our models, we have our views on things, but I read your stuff every day. And what are you thinking? Where are we right now? Are we early, mid, late? Do we not know? Kind of, let's just start with that. Where are we now, and where do you think we'll go in the next, say, few weeks or month?
Sure. So I think the answer is all three. We call it LUV in the time of COVID. There will be an L-shaped recovery, a U-shaped recovery, and V-shaped recovery, depending on whether you look at Texas or Florida or Kentucky, whether it's manufacturing or services. Everything kind of has its own shape. So I think we're early on some, middle on some, and late on others. The interesting thing to me right now is I think on the overall employment side, we're probably past peak pain. At this point, and you've been pretty keen on this, you're mostly having unemployment benefits be a hindrance to bringing people back to work, not a help keeping people afloat at this point. And that's not true everywhere. Certainly, there are places that are still shut down, so those people still need those unemployment benefits. But places like Texas that are reopening to a certain degree, Florida, Georgia, et cetera, it's difficult to bring people back to jobs that pay less than the enhanced unemployment. One interesting piece of the puzzle, though, is the continuing unemployment claims. And you've begun to see the states that opened actually begin to roll those down. So people are coming off of those unemployment rolls slowly. It's not happening quickly. Florida is one of the exceptions to that. Florida came off extremely fast. I think that's going to be one of the stories that'll pick up pace over the next, call it 3 to 4 weeks. There's a decent chance that if we continue to have these types of numbers for continuing claims, and they're lagged somewhat, so it's difficult to get a perfect hold on what's going on right now. But there's a decent chance that the May unemployment number will be the worst number we see this year. And you'll begin to improve pretty quickly. The June number, we don't take that survey for another few weeks. Couple of weeks at this point, that's more than likely going to be better than May in terms of unemployment beginning to come down. So we think it's a mixed bag, but employment's probably going to improve from here.
Okay, that's good news, I hope. And so these jobs are initially, there are a lot of the kind of services jobs and blue collar jobs that were laid off in the first wave. Is that right?
Yeah, most of them. The interesting thing is it's fairly easy to social distance within most manufacturing facilities.
Okay.
So manufacturing theoretically can snap back a little bit faster than the services side of the economy, where we're saying 25%, then 50, 75. We're kind of crawling back on the services and purposefully holding them back. That I think is going to be a story of manufacturing the industry side can move a little bit quicker, and services is going to be the laggard here. But services is also the majority employer, far more important on the employment side than manufacturing.
Okay, so I know you keep an eye on things like traffic patterns and restaurant usage and that sort of thing. What are you seeing there, the rate at coming back? And then what does that say about things like, let's say, food prices or say gasoline consumption, that sort of thing? So, the pace that you're seeing that stuff come back, is it coming back fairly quickly? And is that a good thing?
Yeah, so it's snapping back very quickly on the driving side of things, right? Gasoline driving, that's snapping back much faster than, call it, public transit, airlines, etc. Right? You have the L kind of, or maybe a U for airlines and mass transit, but you have what appears to be a pretty sharp V in driving. Congestion is almost back to normal levels in places like Houston during rush hour. Texas generally is back towards its baseline according to most of the metrics. The RV sales are through the roof.
Really?
It's one of the more interesting data points. People still want to go on vacation, and if you don't want to get on a plane and go to Cabo, you get in an RV and go to the Grand Canyon.
Right.
It's just another way to get out of the house. And I got in a little bit of trouble for saying it, but I'll say it again. If you keep boomers off of cruise ships, they'll find a way to still go places and still have fun in retirement. They're not just going to stay up. They're not just going to stay cooped up in their house. And the interesting thing about that is an RV is not a small investment for most people.
No.
So I think that travel, the kind of call it the parks and recreation side of things, might have more legs than people are really giving credit for. Camping might actually make a comeback here versus your more crowded areas, particularly within that boomer crowd.
Back to the 70s for camping and that sort of thing.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And then, what does this have to, we hear about things like food shortages potentially with meat, and we also hear about, say, storage for crude oil, that sort of thing. With more activity, are you seeing faster drawdown with crude oil, for example, and with, say, more restaurant activity, that sort of thing? Are you seeing, anything happening there in terms of food? I guess first let's talk about crude.
Yeah.
We're in Texas, right?
Yeah. So with crude, we're beginning to see drawdowns, and I'm not sure that it's faster than we anticipated, but gasoline particularly has picked up much faster than people anticipated. That drawdown will be, in my opinion, much faster, much stronger, and have longer legs than was anticipated. On the overall demand side for oil, it's a harder picture to paint. Aviation fuel is a significant driver on the margin of usage within the U.S. So a lack of that is going to a degree, offset any sort of bullishness on the gasoline side. So I'd say those probably balance each other out for the most part as we move forward, and you have a drawdown that's relatively in line with what we were anticipating a few months ago. Okay. On the food side, you've seen a snapback in restaurants for Texas in particular. I've particularly paying attention for that for my clients. We're back to give or take 55% usage of restaurants. On a year-over-year basis, OpenTable has Texas.
We are back now to 55% usage.
55. We're down 55.
Okay.
We're somewhere around 55% usage for restaurants versus last year, right? Mm-hmm. We have 50% occupancy allowed in Texas. That appears to be pretty close to maxed out, at least restaurants where you get reservations.
Okay.
So higher end restaurants mostly, not necessarily the lower end ones. Where we've seen some interesting things in food are particularly on the eat at home food side. We dug through the CPI, the inflation data pretty carefully, and found, when you did that, food at home was getting increasingly expensive in a way that we hadn't seen in a long time. Eggs were getting expensive, meat was getting expensive, fresh fruits and vegetables were getting expensive, and they were accelerating at a pretty rapid pace.
Mm-hmm.
It does look like we're going to have some pretty good crops. It doesn't look like we're going to have trouble on that front. So we shouldn't have the pricing pressure emanating from that side, which is good. The critical aspect is going to be, how do we get the beef demand back up to the point where you actually have cattle ranchers wanting to not cull their herds and therefore drive steak prices higher. I think that's going to take more states opening restaurants, New York, California, big steak consuming areas of the country reopening and really beginning to drive that incremental demand. But another fun note is, I grew up in New Hampshire. Lobster is an important part of eating there, and lobster prices plummeted to the point where lobstermen decided they probably shouldn't even go out, and it was selling for $2 to $4 a pound on the side of the road.
Don't tell my wife. So otherwise we'll be up there soon. So, wow. Okay. So let's just take a minute, and we're sitting in, let's say we're sitting in on October 1st. We've gone through Q2. It was carnage. We've gone through Q3, and we're looking back on Q3 versus Q2. What are you thinking at that point, October 1st of this year? Help me understand a little bit of that based on your perspective today.
Based on my perspective today, I think I'll be sitting. I'll probably be sitting in Boston, hopefully having a client meeting in a lobster that's more expensive than $3, and looking back and wondering how we missed the pickup that was happening in June and July, and the pockets of things that were doing much better than anticipated. It's worth noting, according to one of the data sources I use, auto sales are actually picking back up rapidly from down north of 60% for new cars and used cars, to new autos only being down in the, I call it the high 20% range from a year ago. Okay. Used cars down single digits from a year ago.
Interesting.
On a volume basis. And I think that's kind of that notion, that kind of snapback in different pockets of the economy is going to be what I'm looking back on, wondering how I missed, and I'm going to miss something, but how I missed whatever it might be, whether it was, people wanting to get back on cruises. I don't think they're going to want to get back on cruises. I don't think people are going to jump back on planes call it very quickly. I think we have a 9/11 type of recovery, 3 years, give or take there. I think that's the mindset to use. But there will be something that just completely catches me off guard in terms of the speed and rapidity that it comes back, or with the L shape, it's just never coming back. One thing I think will catch a lot of people off guard is the call it the pivot on the margin from hotels to homes, renting a home instead of renting a hotel, being spaced away from people, having the pool to yourself, that type of thing. We did that last weekend with friends. It was still expensive to do it. Airbnb did not lower the prices.
Right.
So I think there will be trends like that have become pretty clear whether or not they have legs by October, and I think that's probably one of them. Okay,
very interesting. Sam, thanks so much. It's always great to get your perspective on things. I think you bring a different view, and I think that the level of data you're looking at from the high end to the low end really helps me understand where things are. So I really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much for giving us your view. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tony. Always a blast.
Thank you.